Welcome to the Deep Dive. You send us your sources, we explore them deeply, and together we extract the most fascinating and important information.
Exactly.
Today we're turning our attention to, well, a true icon, Albert Einstein.
Mm-hmm.
The source guiding our exploration is the comprehensive Wikipedia entry that covers, gosh, the whole sweep of his remarkable life and contributions.
Yeah, this source really is a treasure trove. It takes us from his early days and education right through to his revolutionary scientific breakthroughs, his often surprising political stances,
Right.
his personal reflections on religion, that deep connection to music, and, his enduring place in our global culture. It's quite the intellectual landscape we're about to traverse.
It really is, and our goal isn't just to retread the familiar ground, is it? We want to dig deeper,
Absolutely.
uncover those unexpected details, and really get a sense of the key insights that shaped Einstein, both as a person and, well, the monumental scientific figure we remember. Okay, let's start at the beginning. He was born in Ulm, Germany, 1879, into a Jewish family. His father was an engineer and salesman, mother's maiden name Koch.
Right, and that early family environment with his father and uncle later founding an electrical equipment company in Munich, it sort of suggests an initial exposure to innovation, perhaps.
Maybe, yeah. Even if young Albert's interests maybe lay elsewhere initially.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting, too, that despite his Jewish background, he actually attended a Catholic elementary school for 3 years.
That's a detail that maybe highlights the cultural landscape back then.
Yeah. Then he spent 7 years at Leupold Gymnasium before eventually leaving Germany. And the source also mentions some early speech difficulties.
Yes, but despite that early challenge, he apparently showed a real aptitude for the natural sciences from quite a young age.
Uh-huh.
And just a small detail, for those who might be curious, the record indicates he was right-handed.
Huh, okay. Good to know. But there's that lovely story about his father showing him a pocket compass.
Oh.
And how that simple device just sparked this lifelong fascination with invisible forces. It's one of those early moments, isn't it, that hints at the profound curiosity that would define him.
Absolutely. And you also see early signs of his intellectual drive, like building mechanical models and his clear talent for mathematics. These weren't just pastimes.
No.
They were expressions of a mind actively trying to figure out how the world worked fundamentally.
And then there's the influence of Max Talmud, later tell me.
Yeah.
This Polish-Jewish medical student who wasn't well off.
Yeah.
He played a really important role, it seems.
Yeah, what's fascinating is how sustained that impact was, this informal mentorship. Talmud dined with the Einsteins weekly for 6 years.
Wow, 6 years.
And introduced young Albert to basic science, maths, philosophers like Kant, Euclid. Einstein himself called Euclid's Elements his holy geometry book. Shows you the effect it had.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? The power of that consistent intellectual exchange on a young, curious mind.
Yep.
Now, let's look at his formal education. He famously failed the entrance exam to the Swiss Federal Polytechnic School, ETH Zurich, at 16.
Right. It's a surprising fact for many, considering, well, everything that came later.
Exactly. A reminder that even genius can have, bumps in the road. Initial setbacks don't define you.
That's a crucial point. And his failure wasn't across the board. He smashed the physics and math sections, but didn't meet the standard elsewhere. But the principal saw his potential, right? Advised him to finish secondary school first at Argo Kantonsschule in Aarau, Switzerland.
And that period turned out to be pretty significant. He lived with Professor Joss Winteler's family and even fell in love with their daughter, Marie.
Yeah, a little glimpse into his personal life alongside the academics. And interestingly, that connection with the Wintelers deepened. His sister later married their son.
Huh.
Also during this time, January 1896, he renounced his German citizenship, Württemberg citizenship, technically at his father's request, to avoid military service.
Smart move.
And he eventually became a Swiss citizen in 1901.
He clearly found his footing academically in Switzerland, though. Graduated secondary school with top marks, perfect scores in physics and math.
Yep.
So at 17, he finally got into ETH Zurich for the physics and math teaching diploma program. But poor young love, Marie Winteler, moved away to teach.
Well, this phase really highlights that parallel development, doesn't it? The intellectual growth and just the normal experiences of being young. His journey wasn't some straight, easy climb.
Not at all.
Yeah.
Okay, let's turn to his family life, which by all accounts was rather intricate. His first child, a daughter named Liesel, born early 1902. He was in Brunei, love of marriage. His future first wife was with her parents in Novi Sad. And what's really striking is the mystery around Lazarus' fate.
Indeed. The historical record is just sparse. She's mentioned in letters, but we don't even know her full name for sure. It's widely thought she might have died in infancy, maybe scarlet fever, around 1903. It's a really poignant, unresolved part of his early life.
So sad. He married Mileva Maric in January 1903, and they later had two sons, Hans Albert, born in Bern in 1904, and Edward, or Tet, born in Zurich in 1910.
But the family dynamic shifted quite a bit when they moved to Berlin in 1914. His wife stayed back in Zurich with the boys.
Right.
And after 5 years apart, they divorced in February 1919.
And pretty soon after, June 1919, he married his German cousin, Elsa Lowenthal. They'd actually been in a relationship since 1912.
Yeah. And it's interesting, they didn't have children together, but he treated Elsa's daughters from her previous marriage, Ilse and Margot, like his own.
But Elsa faced health problems later on.
She did, yes. Diagnosed with heart and kidney issues in 1935 and sadly passed away in December 1936.
And looking at the next generation, of his 3 children, only Hans Albert married and had kids.
That's right. And of those grandchildren, only one, Bernhard Caesar Einstein, lived to adulthood. And he was a physicist, too.
Wow, following in the footsteps. It just reminds you, doesn't it, that even these extraordinary lives are woven with very human, sometimes difficult, family stories.
It certainly gives you a broader context for understanding his, well, relentless scientific drive.
Okay, so let's shift focus fully to that scientific career. It unfolds as this incredible journey of, well, truly groundbreaking work. He graduated ETH Zurich in 1900, teaching diploma, got his doctorate from University of Zurich in 1905. Dissertation, a new determination of molecular dimensions.
And famously, before that academic career really took off, he worked at the Swiss Patent Office in Bern, 1902 to 1909.
Right. It's almost romantic, isn't it? Imagining these revolutionary ideas brewing while he's evaluating, I don't know, everyday inventions.
It's often seen as a period where he just had the mental space, the time to really think deeply about fundamental physics. He did hold lectureships, though, at Bern and Zurich, before becoming a full professor in Prague in 1911. Then back to ETH Zurich before the big move, joining the Prussian Academy of Sciences and Humboldt University in Berlin in 1914.
And with that amazing condition, no formal teaching obligations.
Exactly. Plus, director of the Kaiser Wilhelm Institute for Physics.
He even served as president of the German Physical Society for a couple of years then. His career was definitely on the up.
Clearly. He also held visiting spots at Leiden, Caltech, Oxford.
Right.
But ultimately, in 1933, he joined the Institute for Advanced Study in Princeton, New Jersey. And that's where he stayed, this towering figure, until his death.
Okay, and we absolutely have to talk about his miracle year, 1905. An annus mirabilis.
Oh, yes. Just an astonishing burst of creativity. 4 groundbreaking papers, all published in the Annalen der Physik.
Incredible. The first one explored the photoelectric effect, right? Introducing the idea of light quanta photons, as we call them now.
And it's almost hard to believe now, but that idea initially met with skepticism, even from giants like Planck and Bohr.
Really?
Yeah, what's interesting is that resistance, it wasn't until around 1919, mainly thanks to Millikan's experiments, that it got wide acceptance.
But that paper was absolutely fundamental for quantum theory.
Totally. And it eventually won him the Nobel Prize in Physics in 1921, specifically for explaining the photoelectric effect.
Okay, paper number 2 from that miracle year, Brownian motion, providing really compelling evidence for atoms and molecules.
And even a way to figure out their size. This was also his doctoral thesis subject.
Right. Crucial stuff for solidifying atomic theory when it still faced some doubters.
Definitely bridged the gap between theory and observation.
Then came the paper on the electrodynamics of moving bodies, special relativity, just fundamentally reshaping our understanding of space and time being interconnected.
This one truly revolutionized physics, challenged those long-held Newtonian ideas of absolute space, absolute time, a powerful example of him just re-examining the most basic assumptions.
And finally, the 4th paper in that unbelievable year.
Yeah.
It introduced the world to E times 0.
The mass energy equivalence, probably the most famous equation on the planet.
Has to be. And it revealed this profound link, the immense energy locked in tiny amounts of mass, hinting at atomic power, universe's workings.
Indeed. Unveiled that deep connection between mass and energy, consequences across so many fields, especially nuclear physics.
Moving beyond 1905, his earlier work on statistical physics is really significant too. He was heavily influenced by Boltzmann, even when Boltzmann's ideas weren't, universally loved yet.
Exactly. Even when they were still debated, Einstein saw how profound they were, integrated them into his work on kinetic theory, Brownian motion, shows his intellectual independence.
Yeah, willingness to embrace things not yet mainstream.
Yeah.
And he had a distinct way of approaching physics, didn't he? Often looking for fundamental a priori principles like rotational invariance rather than just like mathematical tricks.
Yes, that focus on underlying physical principles was a real guide for him. He wasn't just shuffling equations, he wanted that deeper, intuitive grasp of reality.
And his quantum theory work went beyond just photons. His stuff on quantizing atomic vibrations, the Einstein solid model that was crucial for condensed matter physics, right? Explained weird things about specific heat.
Absolutely, a key stepping stone in that field. Plus, his work on the adiabatic principle, angle-action variables, all feeding into that evolving quantum picture.
And he played a big role in wave-particle duality, too.
Huge. Showed Planck's energy quanta must have momentum, act like particles introducing the photon concept, though Lewis coined the name later. That really opened the door for de Broglie and the wave nature of matter.
Wow. And his paper on critical opalescence, another example of just how broad his curiosity was.
Yeah, explaining density fluctuations in liquids at their critical point and connecting it to Rayleigh scattering.
Which explains why the sky is blue. Elegant.
Very. Okay, but any discussion of Einstein, you have to dive into general relativity.
Of course. Started with what he called his happiest thought in 1907, the equivalence principle.
That profound idea. Gravity is basically indistinguishable from being in an accelerated frame.
That was the key insight, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Set him on that decade-long quest to generalize relativity to include gravity. He realized special relativity needed to mesh with gravity.
Leading to the understanding that time itself is relative depends on gravity.
He even tried an early calculation of light deflection by gravity, though it wasn't quite right initially.
Yeah, a fascinating glimpse into how his thinking evolved step by step.
Right, and he came to understand that space-time itself must be curved by mass and energy, which led him to Riemannian geometry.
The essential math needed to describe that curvature. Complex stuff.
And by November 1915, after years of intense work and some parallel stuff by Hilbert, the mathematician, he finally nailed the field equations of general relativity.
Yep. Then in 1916, published the full theory, the foundation of the general theory of relativity. Monumental. A whole new framework for gravity, the cosmos.
And remarkably, even back then, in 1916, he predicted gravitational waves.
Took a century for direct detection, but the prediction held true. Even that early theoretical work laid the foundation for everything that followed.
Then came Eddington's eclipse observations in 1919.
Pivotal moment. Confirmed the bending of starlight near the sun, just like the theory said. That's what made him a global superstar, basically.
Yeah, the Times headline. Revolution in science, new theory of the universe, Newtonian ideas overthrown. Just wow.
Transformative. Not just for him, but for science, public perception. Max Born called GR the greatest feat of human thinking about nature.
And Paul Dirac said it was probably the greatest scientific discovery ever made. Incredible endorsements from his peers.
He also applied GR to cosmology in 1917. But initially, he added the cosmological constant to get a static universe, which was the thinking at the time.
And it's interesting how even Einstein could be influenced by the status quo. He later called it his biggest blunder, didn't he?
Oh,
After Hubble showed the universe was expanding.
Famously disowned it, yeah. And in that same crazy productive year, 1917, he also predicted stimulated emission.
The basis for lasers and masers.
Yeah.
Ubiquitous tech now.
Stemming from his insights into how light interacts with atoms statistically. Huge impact on quantum mechanics, modern tech.
He even came up with the wave equation for de Broglie waves, which instarred Schrödinger.
Directly inspired Schrödinger's fundamental equation of quantum mechanics. The connections between his contributions are just amazing.
And that stress-energy momentum pseudotensor. That sounds complicated.
It is. It came out of the dynamic nature of spacetime and GR, the challenges of defining conserved energy and momentum when gravity itself is part of the dynamic field. Really deep stuff.
And much later, indirect detection of gravitational waves in the 70s from that binary pulsar.
PSRB 1913 plus 16, yeah. Strong astrophysical evidence. The orbital decay matched GR's predictions perfectly.
And then finally, LIGO in 2016. Direct detection. From merging black holes a billion light years away.
Stunning confirmation, a century after she predicted it. An incredible validation of his genius.
Truly a triumph. Okay, so turning to the latter part of his career, He spent a lot of energy on the unified field theory.
A substantial amount, yeah. His big ambition, one framework for gravity and the other forces known then.
But in that quest, he kind of overlooked the strong and weak nuclear forces, which were becoming better understood.
Largely, yes. So his own unified theory didn't pan out in his lifetime, but it still inspires physicists today looking for that theory of everything, like string theory.
He even worked on wormhole models.
As part of that unified field research, yeah. Highly theoretical, trying to model particles and charges as solutions to the field equations, shows his willingness to push boundaries, explore abstract ideas.
And collaboration was important throughout his career, too. Long-term partners like Infeld, Rosen, Bergman.
And shorter collaborations with many others. Plus, the famous Bohr-Einstein debates on quantum mechanics.
Right, showing his deep engagement even when he disagreed fundamentally.
Exactly. And the Einstein to Haas experiment, demonstrating magnetization comes from electron spin. Another collaborative effort.
Providing key support for understanding magnetism at the microscopic level.
Crucial insight, yeah. And he even suggested to Schrödinger a way to derive Bose-Einstein statistics using harmonic oscillators.
Showcasing his intuition about statistical mechanics and quantum ideas.
Schrödinger ran with it, but Einstein's insight was the catalyst. Okay, let's shift gears. His move to the U.S., February 1933, while visiting, he decides not to go back to Germany.
Because of the Nazi rise to power. A perilous moment in history.
Absolutely. And when he got back to Belgium, late March 33, he heard his house, his boat in Berlin, confiscated.
Terrible.
That sealed it. Renounced his German citizenship March 28, 1933, in Antwerp.
And settled in Princeton, New Jersey, joining the Institute for Advanced Study.
Yeah.
Initial plan was to split time, but...
The situation in Europe made that impossible. He became a U.S. citizen in 1940. And he often talked about appreciating the meritocracy here, the freedoms of thought and speech, believing they fostered creativity.
Then World War II looms. And in 1939, prompted by concerns from Szilard, Teller, Wigner, other Hungarian scientists worried about a Nazi bomb.
Einstein signs that crucial letter to President Roosevelt.
Warning about the possibility, recommending the U.S. start its own uranium research, chain reactions.
It's considered a major catalyst for the Manhattan Project.
But it's complex, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
He supported the Allies, but fundamentally opposed using nuclear fission as a weapon.
Deeply opposed.
Yeah.
And later, he expressed profound regret about signing that letter, told Linus Pauling in '54 it was one of his greatest mistakes.
Though he felt it was necessary at the time, given the Nazi threat.
A tragic necessity, in his view.
His social and political views were also quite pronounced. He identified as a socialist, criticized capitalism.
Yeah, he saw socialism as a potential way to address inequalities he felt were inherent in capitalism. His 1949 essay, Why Socialism, lays out his thinking pretty clearly.
And of course, a staunch opponent of the Nazis.
Unwavering. His Jewish heritage, his understanding of totalitarianism, he was critical from the very beginning.
He also supported a Jewish homeland idea, but favored a binational state in Palestine. Functional interdependence, not a sovereign state with borders. Army.
His views there were nuanced, evolved a bit. He believed in the right to a secure homeland, but worried about conflict, always pushed for peaceful coexistence.
And back in 1918, during the November Revolution in Germany, he signed a petition for a democratic assembly, joined the German Democratic Party.
Shows his early engagement with democratic politics, social issues.
After WWII, deeply worried about Cold War tensions, nuclear war. That's when he made that famous quote about World War III weapons.
I know not with what weapons World War III will be fought, but World War IV will be fought with sticks and stones. Stark warning.
Just chillin'.
Embodies his fear of nuclear annihilation, a regression to primitivism.
He campaigned against nuclear testing, too, with Bertrand Russell, Albert Schweitzer, signed the Russell-Einstein Manifesto shortly before he died.
Which led to the Pugwash Conferences on Science and World Affairs.
Right, promoting peace, global security.
A powerful call to conscience for scientists everywhere.
And in Princeton, he joined the NAACP, supported African-American civil rights, corresponded with W.E.B. Du Bois.
Even offered to be a character witness when Du Bois was accused of being a communist spy. Charges were dropped, but the gesture was significant.
And he was friends with Paul Robeson, co-chair of the American Crusade to end lynching with him.
Yeah, highlights his deep commitment to social justice way beyond physics.
Though he did quip, politics is for the present, but an equation is for eternity.
Reflects his belief in the lasting power of scientific truth versus, the transient nature of politics.
In 1952, he was actually offered the presidency of Israel.
Incredible testament to how highly he was regarded.
But he turned it down, cited lack of aptitude for governing age, health.
But respectfully. Expressed his commitment to the Jewish people, hope for peace with Arab nations.
And late in life, adopted a vegetarian lifestyle, believing it was ethically and environmentally best for humankind.
Yeah, reflects broader ethical considerations, linking personal choice to planetary well-being.
Now, his views on religion. It's important, he repeatedly clarified. He did not believe in a personal God.
Right, a persistent misunderstanding. He defined his religion more as a rapturous amazement at the harmony of natural law.
Which reveals an intelligence of such superiority that human thinking is an utterly insignificant reflection.
He saw great religious thinkers as sharing that sense of cosmic wonder, free from dogma, from a God in man's image, often put him at odds with established religion. He saw kinship with Democritus, Francis of Assisi, Spinoza.
And in a 1954 letter to an atheist, he called the idea of God a product of human weakness. Pretty clear non-theistic stance.
Very clear.
Beyond science and politics, though, he had this deep, lifelong love of music.
Absolutely. Started young. His mother played piano, encouraged him on the violin, partly for culture integration.
May have started at 5, but didn't really get into it till he was 13. Mozart's violin sonatas sparked it.
Seems so. Taught himself through systematic practice, noting passion is a better teacher than duty.
Nice. And by 17, his Beethoven performance was praised as excellent and revealing great insight. The teacher noted his deep love for music, its unique significance for him.
It must have been a vital outlet, solace, inspiration, a different way of engaging with the world than physics.
Definitely. Okay, his final years. April 1955, he wrote his last statement for an Israel Independence Day telecast, expressing hope for peace.
Poignant.
Just days later, passed away to sleep April 18, 1955. Age 76. Princeton Hospital. Ruptured abdominal aortic aneurysm.
He famously refused surgery. His last words, unknown. The nurse didn't understand German.
And his ashes were scattered at an undisclosed location, a final act of privacy. But there's that unsettling postscript. During the autopsy, his brain was removed by the pathologist, Thomas Harvey, without family permission.
Highly controversial, ethically questionable, but maybe speaks to the sheer fascination the world had with the organ that produced such breakthroughs.
Yeah. His recognition, his legacy, just immense. Honorary doctorates times Person of the Century in '99.
All those awards named after him, the Albert Einstein Award, medal, prize, even a crater on the moon underscores his huge impact.
Became globally recognizable after GR was confirmed in 1919, often portrayed as that absent-minded professor.
That hair, widely parodied. And worth noting, lots of quotes get misattributed to him.
Ah, yes. Robert Oppenheimer's eulogy captured his character beautifully, didn't it? Almost wholly without worldliness, a wonderful purity at once childlike and profoundly stubborn.
A great summation. And Abraham Pace, his biographer, maybe nailed the uniqueness more than anyone before or since. He knew how to invent immutable principles and to make use of statistical laws.
Wow.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, it's just this incredible blend, isn't it? Revolutionary science, complex personal life, evolving political views, that personal take on religion, love of music, and this enduring cultural impact.
Absolutely. His journey, patent clerk to global icon, full of surprises. But what stands out is that constant curiosity, the relentless pursuit of understanding, the sheer courage to challenge everything.
Yeah, and that raises a really interesting point for you, the listener, to think about. How might Einstein's willingness to challenge paradigms in science, in society, inspire your own thinking? What seemingly impossible problem could you maybe approach with a totally fresh perspective, perhaps emboldened by his example? It's definitely something worth mulling over long after this deep dive ends.